Welcome back to all my furry savages. It's your favorite beast of burdened opinions, Chuck Dewclaw, coming to you live from the only news station brave enough to operate in the deep dark woods, where the Wi-Fi is weak, but the masculinity is strong. And tonight we're diving headfirst into a subject so drenched in testosterone, I expect half of you to grow beards before we're even done talking about it. That's right, folks, we're talking about movies. But not just any movies. Oh no. We're talking about the kind of films that slap you in the face with raw, unfiltered, primal manliness. The kind of flicks that make you want to chop wood or wrestle a bear or at least challenge your neighbor to a duel with chainsaws at dawn or something. You know, the kind of movies where the dialogue is gruff, the explosions are excessive, and the concept of feelings, well, those are just better left to the women folk and the French. And before some soy latte sipping, man bun sporting city boy starts whining about toxic masculinity, let me remind you of something. These movies aren't about being toxic. They're about being strong, fearless, and looking danger in the eye while lighting a cigar off of a flaming wreckage of a helicopter you just blew up 10 seconds ago. That's not toxic, folks. That's aspirational. So buckle up, buttercups. Because tonight, we're counting down the top 5 manliest movies of all time. At least in Chuck's opinion. And if you think Twilight's making the cut, well, you better start running now because I am definitely starting to feel hungry. Let's dive into it, shall we? Well, let's kick this pig and start the list off with number 5, The Predator from 1987. Look, folks, if you took a military-grade bear trap, filled it with steroids, gave it a machine gun, and taught it how to wrestle alien bounty hunters, you'd pretty much have the Predator. Arnold Schwarzenegger, a.k.a. the Austrian Oak, a.k.a. Captain Biceps, or a.k.a. the only man who could punch a planet into orbit, leads an elite squad of commandos into the jungle. But instead of a normal day at the office, i.e. punching terrorists and flexing in slow motion, they run into a 7-foot-tall, dreadlocked alien hunter with a cloaking device and a face like a deep-sea horrorfish. This movie is so manly that even the handshakes cause earthquakes. Case in point, when Arnold and Carl Weathers lock hands. The sheer force of their vein-popping grip could have powered a small town for a month. And let's not forget the greatest line in cinematic history. "Get to the chopper!" If Predator were any more manly, the film reel itself would have a flippin' beard. That's all I got to say about that one, folks. I hope to God you agree with me on it. Coming in next at number 4, we're going to have RoboCop from 1987. You ever wake up and think, you know what's missing from my life? A half-human, half-cyborg cop who solves crime with a fully automatic hand cannon and zero regard for personal space. Well, guess what? The 80s heard your call, and they delivered RoboCop. A movie so insanely metal that it could only be described as Terminator's cousin who plays football and chews nails for breakfast. Alex Murphy was just a regular cop until he got absolutely shredded by Detroit's most overzealous crime syndicate. But instead of retiring to the great beyond like a normal person, he gets turned into the most unstoppable metal lawman since steam-powered cowboy. He doesn't eat, he doesn't sleep, doesn't feel pain, but he does shoot bad guys through walls with the precision of a wolf tracking a scent 2 states away. Also, RoboCop's prime directive is literally serve the public trust, protect the innocent, and uphold the law. But in practice, it's mostly shoot criminals in the face while making deadpan remarks. The only downside? He never turns into a full wolf cyborg, which is really what I was waiting for all the way to the end of the movie. Hollywood, you really need to fix this one plot point, I think, and then the movie would be absolutely perfect. Alright, I know the next one's going to get me some hate, but here we go. Coming in at number 3 is Tombstone from 1993. Now I know what you're thinking. Chuck, a Western? Isn't that kind of cliche for manly movies? Aren't manly movies supposed to be about explosions and punching aliens in the face or something? Well, first of all, how dare you question my list? Second, Tombstone isn't just any Western. It's the most rugged, testosterone-drenched, whiskey-soaked tale of gunfighting, loyalty, and mustache-growing that will ever be put to film. And we can start off by talking about Kurt Russell as Wyatt Earp. This man's mustache alone could lead a battalion into battle. He doesn't have time for nonsense. He just walks into town with his grizzled scowl, stares down criminals, and enforces justice the old-fashioned way. You know, by shooting them in the face. But the real scene stealer in this movie was Val Kilmer's Doc Holliday. If charisma were a weapon, Doc would be dual-wielding. He's a whiskey-chugging, tuberculosis-having, southern-drawling pistol wizard who doesn't fear death. Because frankly, he's just too cool to die. And let's talk about some of those famous lines from the movie that he delivered. I'm your Huckleberry, or why Johnny Ringo, you look as though someone just walked across your grave. That line alone contains more raw masculinity than an entire lumberjack convention. Tombstone is grit, loyalty, revenge, and honor, all rolled into one, served with a side of bourbon and gunpowder. If you don't feel 10% tougher after watching it, you may need to check your pulse. Alright, getting us back on track with number 2, Rocky IV from 1985. Alright, look folks, you can't have a list of manly movies and not include the Rocky franchise. And the manliest of them all, in my opinion, was Rocky IV. Why? Well, basically this movie ended the Cold War. Sylvester Stallone's Rocky punches his way through an entire training montage so intense that the wolves in the Siberian wilderness were taking notes. He doesn't need fancy gyms, no sir. He lifts logs, climbs mountains, yells at the sky like a feral beast preparing to establish dominance. And then there's Ivan Drago, played by the famous Dolph Lundgren. You know, the 6'5" Soviet boxing machine with a punch so strong he could KO a brick wall. This dude is so jacked that I'm convinced he was grown in a lab from the DNA of a grizzly bear and an anvil. And the final fight? Oh, it's just man versus man, freedom versus communism, USA versus USSR, heart versus cold, dead muscle tissue and all. If this fight scene had gone on any longer, bald eagles would have stormed the theater demanding front row seats. Look, folks, you may not be a Rocky fan, but you have to admit that Rocky IV was what the manliest of all manly American men strive to be. Alrighty, the moment we've all been waiting for, Chuck's number 1 pick for the most manly movie of all time. Well, here it is, folks. Coming in at number 1, Conan the Barbarian from 1982. Let me tell you something. If you haven't seen Conan the Barbarian, you may as well hand in your man card, shave your beard, and start drinking soy lattes while listening to smooth jazz. Because this, folks, this isn't just a movie. This is a rite of passage. Before CGI, before superhero movies, and before Hollywood made action stars wear tactical vests instead of just being naturally bulletproof, there was Conan the Barbarian. A movie so drenched in raw, primal, barbaric energy that it should come with a warning label for excessive chest hair growth. Conan's life is one long metal album cover. As a kid, his village gets burned to the ground by the Thulsa Doom, an evil warlord played by James Earl Jones. Yes, that's right, Darth Vader himself. But this time with the power of snake-based sorcery. Thulsa Doom murders Conan's parents right in front of him and then, just for fun, enslaves him, making him push a gigantic wooden wheel for literally years. And let me tell you, little boys grow up. After years of pushing that wheel of pain, Conan emerges looking like a Greek god who only eats red meat and bench presses war horses. And here's the best part. His first words in the movie. They don't come for 20 minutes. Why? Well, because real men don't need to talk. They communicate through glowering, flexing, and occasionally decapitating people. Eventually, Conan wins his freedom, gets a massive sword, and embarks on the greatest, most savage revenge tour of all time. So you might be asking yourself, why is this movie unfiltered manliness? Well, Conan solves problems the old-fashioned way, with a giant sword. Forget talking things out, forget diplomacy. Conan's only negotiation tactic is swinging a hunk of steel the size of a stop sign until there's no one left to argue. His strategy is simple. Are you in his way? He cuts you in half. Do you have something he wants? He takes it. Are you a sorcerer with a snake cult? You're getting beheaded in front of all of your followers. And he does all this shirtless, because armor? Well, that's for cowards. Plus, he has the most barbaric workout routine ever put to film. You know how action movies today have like montages of guys training in fancy gyms, flipping tires, and running up mountains? Well, Conan's training is 10,000 times harder. Step 1. Get enslaved and chained to a wheel of pain. Check. Step 2. Push it for years and years while growing the most insane biceps in cinema history. Check. Step 3. Get thrown into the gladiator fights where the only way to survive is to kill literally everyone around you. Check. Step 4. Become so legendary that warlords start worshiping you like a protein-fueled demigod. Double check. By the end of it, Conan is so jacked, so powerful, and so naturally muscular that he doesn't even need a gym membership. He is the gym. And we could not even talk about this movie without talking about the best manly one-liner ever spoken. Okay? Conan doesn't waste time with unnecessary dialogue. And that's mostly because Arnold didn't speak good English back then. But he speaks only when the gods demand it. And when a fellow warrior asks him, Conan, what is best in life? He delivers the greatest, most barbarically poetic answer of all time. He leans forward and he says, to crush your enemies, see them driven before you, and then hear the lamentations of their women. Folks, that line isn't just dialogue, that is a life philosophy. If you could bottle that line and sell it as a cologne, it would smell like blood, victory, and fresh cut lumber. And let's definitely not forget about the boss fight. You know, the final fight of the movie. After spending an entire movie punching, stabbing, and conquering his way through an army of cultists, Conan finally confronts Thulsa Doom. Now, most movie heroes have long, drawn-out monologues when facing their ultimate enemy. Not Conan. What does he do? He walks right up to Thulsa Doom and just straight up chops his head off. No dramatic speech, no hesitation, just one clean sword swing, and boom, James Earl Jones is now a Pez dispenser. And then he tosses the severed head down the temple stairs like it's a bowling ball and casually walks away. Why? Well, that's what legends do. There's really no other explanation for it. And most importantly, it teaches us that strength, discipline, and a giant sword can solve just about any problem. So folks, if you haven't seen Conan the Barbarian, fix that immediately. Because every second you waste not watching it, your beard gets a little shorter and your testosterone count gets a little lower. And there you have it, my furry savages. The top 5 manliest movies of all time, according to Chuck Dewclaw. If your favorites didn't make the cut, well, maybe it's time to reevaluate your taste. Or at least do a few push-ups before you start crying about it in the comments. Look, these aren't just movies, folks. They're life lessons wrapped in explosions and gritted teeth. They teach us how to stand tall, fight hard, and most importantly, how to deliver a one-liner right before blowing something up. And honestly, if that's not a skill worth preserving, I don't know what is. But before you run off to rewatch any of these cinematic masterpieces we talked about tonight, let me leave you with one final thought. The world wants you soft, weak, apologizing for your own strength. But not here, not in these woods, and not on this show. If there's one thing you take away from tonight, let it be this. Never let anyone tell you that being tough, bold, or daring is outdated. Because if the movies have taught us anything, it's that the strong survive, and the weak, well, they're just extras in someone else's story. Now that's going to be it for tonight, my savages. But remember, stay wild, stay untamed, and always keep a cigar handy for dramatic effect. This is Chuck Dewclaw signing off from the deep dark woods. And if you're not watching the Lewd Lycanthrope for all your entertainment, well, you're probably watching something that makes your ancestors ashamed. Stay furry, my friends.